Elizabeth. But yes, despite the fact that Mike just burned to death, this is saying that the story isn't over. The vengeful spirit, Golden Freddy, wasn't even in this game, so now it's time for their finale. Before we go to the next game, we have to go over some Easter eggs. Firstly, this guy. His name is Helpy. I love him. These are rare screens you can get to show the animatronics in the alleyway at night before you salvage them. Molten Freddy doesn't really show anything. Scrap Trap shows some really long documents, a poster for Spookfest, inviting you to join the spookiest party of the year, and a building that says One Night at the Opera. This might imply it's October, like I said earlier. Scrap Baby has the same legal documents, a wolf poster that says The Legend of the Terrible Something Wolf, probably Man Wolf. There's also a clown ringmaster, making an elephant dance and laughing. The bottom text says, don't want to miss it, and the top text says, hey-t-o. I have no idea. Lefty's screen shows the puppet screaming on a poster. I think this is likely the puppet actually manipulating the poster to show its mental state, which happens in FNAF 1. You can see the puppet inside Lefty. And there's also the really, really annoying fun poster over his shoulder. You have a guy in a purple suit, puppeting a smaller version of himself, with a bear wearing a birthday hat, and a clown. Symbolically, these are clearly the Afton family. William is Purple Guy, duh. Cece is the bear with the giant jaw, whose birthday it is, which is very cruel. Elizabeth is the clown, because Baby is a clown. And then the puppet is Mike, for some reason. Maybe we're not supposed to get confused between the puppet and the marionette, and maybe this is just calling him a dummy, or saying William was talking through him. Like if William told Michael to put Cece and Elizabeth back together, and then Michael told Cece he would put him back together, maybe that was him being puppeted by William, his father. And now we talk about Candy Cadet. This is Candy Cadet.
I have candy all day, every day. Candy, candy, candy.
He's the most annoying thing in this game. If you use one of your 10 nightly tokens on him, he might tell you a story.
I am a Candy Cadet. Come get your candy here. I have candy all day, every day. Candy, candy, candy. Return to Candy Cadet again, and maybe I will tell you a story.
He has 3 stories that are all equally as confusing and obtuse. Before we address them, I want to discuss the Molten MCI theory. Molten Freddy in this game is entered without Baby, taking the face and voice of Funtime Freddy. Since he's the amalgamation of the Funtimes, and since we discussed how the Funtimes and Mini Renas and stupid Biddy Babs were given life by taking remnant from the original animatronics between 1985 and 87, that makes Molten Freddy the amalgamation of the MCI kids. This is mildly controversial, because some people think it would require soul splitting and duplication, which I hope I explained was not required to make the Funtimes out of the MCI kids. Some people think it's actually impossible, because the MCI kids moved on in FNAF 3. For reasons I'll discuss later, I actually think the bad ending is the canon ending of FNAF 3. With all of that said, even though I do believe in Molten MCI, meaning I think that Molten Freddy is the MCI kids and not new unheard of victims, I don't think that Candy Cadet stories are about Molten MCI, which is what most people think. Candy Cadet tells 3 stories, and all 3 stories involve 5 things, and then some sort of event that would combine 5 things. People think that these stories are just telling the player that Molten MCI is true, that the 5 kids became one entity. And I don't think that's true. For one, the stories don't match up with the events of the children being united as Molten Freddy. And for another, I think the game already told us this, and this is not a big reveal. It's in the books explicitly, and Henry says that the souls are in Molten Freddy, and they're probably the MCI kids given the gravestone ending. I think these Candy Cadet stories are about something else. You have to ask the question, who is Candy Cadet speaking to? None of the other instances in the series where one character is speaking and even giving us lore and background and stuff, in none of those instances is it non-diegetic. It is always one character is telling another character information. The phone guy tutorial is telling a security guard what they need to know. So if Candy Cadet is a product, is a robot that somebody made that you can purchase, that was made to tell somebody stories, then who were those stories meant for? Well, it's clearly the player, Mike. Someone is relaying these stories to Mike, which means they've either been programmed in by Henry, the storyteller, or the animatronic is haunted. And I think it's that second one. I think the vengeful spirit is telling Mike these stories. And with that context, these stories make a lot more sense. So without further ado, let's get into the Candy Cadet stories. The 5 Orphans.
Now I will tell you a story about a kind man who would visit 5 orphans and bring them toys and gladness. The man lived alone, and lived in fear that someone might break into the house of one of the 5 children, so he adopted all 5, and brought them together in one place, in his own home. He promised them to never leave them, and they promised to always come home, and never stay out too late. He left one day to buy food, his heart being filled with gladness, but returns to find that the burglar had chosen his home, and killed all 5 of the children. The man could only afford one coffin, so he stitched the 5 bodies together to make one, and buried the child. That night, there was a knock at the door.
This kind man is Henry, because of the repeated line brought them together in one place, which Henry says during the insanity ending.
I have to call them all back, all of them, together in one place.
He adopted all 5, and brought them together in one place.
Henry is a kind man who makes toys, video games, and animatronics, which is why he brings
Toys and gladness.
I think the meaning of Candy Cadet stories isn't to dish out lore metaphorically to the player, it's to give information to Mike that the Vengeful Spirit has learned from all of these mini-games. Vengeful Spirit is telling Mike that Henry is a good guy, and that 5 children were killed, and they've now been combined together as Molten Freddy, and have returned. It's telling him what Pizzeria Simulator is about. The guy pulling the strings is the good guy. They were killed by the bad guy, and now they've returned. The 5 Keys.
Now I will tell you a story about a young woman who was sealed in a small room. In the room was a furnace, and 5 keys. She was told that each of the 5 keys would unlock one of 5 doors outside the room. Inside each room was a child that she could take with her as she fled the building. But she was only allowed to leave her own room with 1 key, not all 5. Desperate to find a way to save all 5 children, the woman melted 5 keys together in the furnace to create a single key, hoping it would unlock all 5 doors. Of course, it did not work that way. Now her key opened none of the doors. Rather than leaving her room with a key to 1 life, she had taken with her the key to 5 deaths.
This is the Vengeful Spirit telling Mike what she learned in Give Gifts, Give Life. As the puppet Charlie was sealed in a small room, the gift box that she's forced to live in, she had the ability to save the children in the MCI, potentially by taking one and literally taking them away from Freddy's, bringing them physically away from William. But of course that wouldn't stop William. He would just kill someone else. So she chose to remain, to be there for more kids, which of course led to the 5 deaths, and her response was to give them life by having them haunt the animatronics. She was trying to do the right thing, and ended up helping no one. And I think that that's what makes her a compelling character. She had a plan, and she had good intentions, it just didn't work out. I always liked the puppet. It's always thinking. The 5 Kittens.
Now I will tell you a story about a little boy. He had a red snake that he kept in a metal cage, whose hunger could not be satisfied. One day, the boy found 5 baby kittens outside his house. He brought them inside and kept them in a shoebox. He knew that the snake might kill them, but could not bring himself to get rid of the snake. He knew that if he chose one kitten to feed to the snake, it might be satisfied, but he could not choose. So, he went to bed, leaving the cage open. The snake went to the shoebox, chose a kitten at random, and ate it. After 5 nights had gone by, the boy was full of regret and cut the snake open. He pieced the remains together and put the kitten back into the shoebox.
5 baby kittens, you say? Why would it say baby kittens, when kitten already means baby cat, if not specifically to use the word baby? The boy in this story pieces the baby kitten back together, kind of like how Mike puts his sister back together, his sister who's in baby. That would make the kitten Elizabeth, and the snake, who is red and lives in a metal cage and is always looking for things to snatch and chooses one at random, it's baby. Even the 5 nights mentioned reflect on Mike, who spent 5 nights at Circus Babies. It's actually the only place he spends 5 nights. FNAF 2 he spends 1 night, FNAF 1 he spends 7 nights, FNAF 3 he spends 6. FNAF 4, his gameplay section might not even be real, it's a nightmare, meaning the 5 nights refers to sister location. Him being a little boy also follows the pattern of Charlie being the only female in any of the stories, and Henry being a full-grown man. If there's a boy in the FNAF games, it's either Cece or Mike, and I think it's Mike. This story is hammering home that Elizabeth has been, metaphorically, removed from baby and put back together. That's why in sister location she was willing to kill who she thought was William, and didn't care about anything except for her freedom. But in this game, she wants to
make you proud, Daddy.
Because this is baby, and this is Elizabeth. But just like you can't put the kitten back together, putting Elizabeth back together didn't bring her back to life. Because, unfortunately for William, that's not how it works. You can put them back together all you want, but you still let the snake eat them. They're still dead. So now Mike knows what the Vengeful Spirit knows about Henry, Charlie, and Elizabeth. And that is what Candy Cadet is for. Alright, some loose wrap-up now. The Rockstar animatronics are not heavily featured, but it's hinted that they might be built out of the same material as the original animatronics. Why does Rockstar Freddy have purple accessories? I don't know. There's a discussion about the Rockstar animatronics being important or not, and some people say that because they're not required to purchase to beat the game, that you can't use their presence as canon evidence, but that's very wrong. Children's drawings of the Rockstar animatronics exist in the office, meaning that regardless of your choices during the playthrough, the canon of the series is clearly that these animatronics are present in the building. It should also be noted that it's possible that the box is not the FNAF 6 restaurant. That's just what most people assume. But if you go by my theory that the original intention for the box was to show that Cece and Foxy Bro are brothers and that Foxy Bro is Mike Schmidt, the reason that the box changed might simply be that now the Schmidts are the Aftons. It went from Foxy Bro is Mike Schmidt to Foxy Bro is Mike Afton, who changed his name to Mike Schmidt at some point. It's also possible that during FNAF 4, there was no intention that Purple Guy would be Foxy Bro and Cece's father, thus leading to a change in the box as the story developed over the years. This is Funtime Chica. There was no Funtime Chica in Sister Location because she was at Chica's Party World, which has led to a fan theory that I personally think is very important and that we will discuss now. These are the mediocre melodies. They are viewed as lesser than the Freddy's animatronics. Obviously, they are mediocre. And as MatPat points out in his video on them, they seem more southern themed than the Freddy's bunch. Pigpatch and Ned Bear specifically have southern accents. Very long story short, it seems likely that the mediocre melodies and Chica were once a restaurant chain, and Freddy and Bonnie were once a restaurant chain, and that those two restaurants merged together. In real life, Showbiz Pizza Place and Pizza Time Theater merged together to become Showbiz Pizza Time, which is actually a fantastic name. The other name for Showbiz Pizza Time is, of course, Chuck E. Cheese's. That's why these other kids in Happiest Day probably are wearing the mediocre melody masks, even if they don't line up perfectly. And in FNAF 3, when Phone Guy says,
"You'll be expected to wear the temporary costumes provided to you. Keep in mind that they were found on very short notice, so questions about appropriateness/relevance should be deflected."
he's probably talking about costumes from the mediocre melodies, which Fazbear Entertainment would have recently acquired. After the MCI, when Freddy's is shut down, William retained the full rights to use Bonnie, Freddy, and Foxy, his creations for Freddy's, but Chica and the other mediocres were spun off from the Freddy's brand, at least until the gang all got united together again for the FNAF 2 location. William did make Funtime Chica, but it seems like this was a formality, or a contract for him to develop, even though he wasn't in charge of her restaurant. Chica being separate from the other characters will matter more later. And that is Pizzeria Simulator, the surprise ending to Five Nights at Freddy's. Scott promised a custom night update would be on its way, just as he had done for Sister Location, but he ended up changing his mind, and instead made Ultimate Custom Night as its own title, as a small little bonus cap to FNAF. Except we still have one game between Pizzeria Simulator and Ultimate Custom Night. It's time to get back to the Five Nights at Freddy's security logbook. Yes, this is a game. Yes, this counts. The FNAF Security Logbook is an activity book, and that makes it a game. This is an in-universe book, meaning everything in it except for the copyright page is canon. The book launched on March 1st, 2018. The front cover states it is the Security Logbook, but that's been crossed out, so instead it says the Survival Logbook. The branding and images used throughout the book are of the FNAF 1 designs, which makes a lot of sense, because this book takes place right before FNAF 3. Each chapter in the book begins with an image of the FNAF 3 office. Why is there dark humor associated with dying on your shift in this book? Why are there word searches and puzzles? Because this is a kid's book given out at Fazbear Frights. It's meant to play up the horror of the Freddy's legacy. The first page asks us to write our name, but somebody already wrote their name in the book. Someone named Mike. This gives further evidence that the FNAF 3 guard is Mike. So yes, this is able to continue the story despite Mike being dead, because it's an in-between poll. It's in between FNAF 1 and 3. In FNAF 3, Phone Guy says,
Hey, glad you came back for another night.
He says this on night 1, meaning Mike had been working there for at least one day before the game started. So this book takes place the week before FNAF 3. Fazbear Frights exists, but Springtrap hasn't been found yet. Mike is just sitting in the office, doing nothing. Got it? The book is full of blood splatters and stains, which I think are in-universe jokes about the Fazbear Frights horror attraction. But there's a lot of messages and text written in red pen. This red pen writing and drawing is Mike. He writes his name in red pen in the front, and so all red pen markings are from him. Scattered throughout the books are tally marks. Unless it's hidden on some obscure Reddit thread, and trust me, I read plenty of obscure Reddit threads while writing this, but nobody knows what these tally marks are for. It's thought there is some code left to be deciphered in the book, and that the tally marks are the clue. But whatever it is has not been worked out yet. At least no theories put forward are to my satisfaction. Besides the tally marks, Mike will also fill out the book by writing in little comments when the book asks for them. Like on page 6, the book asks,
List 10 reasons why applying to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza seems like a good idea at the time.
and Mike writes.
Employees get free pizza.
Mike is also something of a cartoonist, because he draws throughout the book. Like on page 29, he draws what prizes he would want to win at Freddy's as a child, and he draws himself as a child, water skiing, holding a bag of money. Now you might notice that this is on page 28 and this is page 52. We'll get back to that. In case you don't believe that Mike is Michael Afton, on page 30, when asked about what TV character he relates to with his current experiences, he says,
Clara from The Immortal and the Restless, because everything about this place is crazy, and no one seems to notice except me.
And on page 34, he draws casual bongos. He also draws exotic butters on page 92. On the next page, we're asked to reflect on our happiest day, with an image of a puppet giving a cake to a young girl. If you'll flip the page, there's some Faz coupons, one of which is labeled Happiest Day.
Reserved party room, 3-tier birthday cake. Receive a gift from the puppet. Custom party kit with invitations and hats.
Assuming this book takes place right before FNAF 3, this is perhaps the best evidence we have that